God morgon och välkomna till det här webbinariet som är det 5:e i serien på temat design för bättre hälsa, patienter och brukare som aktiva medskapare. Hela webbinarieserien den här hösten ordnas i samarbete mellan SKL, Sveriges kommuner och landsting, och SVID, Stiftelsen Svensk Industridesign. Good morning and welcome to this webinar, which is the 5th in the series with the theme Design for Better Health, Patients and Users as Active Co-Creators. And these webinars are arranged by SALAR, Swedish Association of Local Authorities and Regions, and SVID, the Swedish Industrial Design Foundation. And today the theme is family by family, and our guest speaker is Caroline Curtis from South Australia in Australia. And she will tell us about how her organization, by using design methods, created a network of families that supports other families whose life has become complicated. The aim of the work is to help families not only to survive but also to live a good life. Som gäst och föreläsare idag har vi Caroline Curtis, och hon är med oss från South Australia i Australien och kommer att berätta för oss om hur man har skapat ett nätverk där familjer stöttar andra familjers vars liv är problematiska, för att de inte bara ska kunna överleva utan för att de också ska kunna leva ett bra liv. Och när Caroline har berättat för oss ungefär en halvtimme så kommer ni att kunna vara med och ställa frågor. Jag heter Marie Pernebring och jag jobbar på SKL, och bredvid mig sitter Jonas Gumbel.
Precis. Good morning, my name is Jonas Gumbel and I work at the Swedish Industrial Design Foundation as a program manager for a new program, Health, or it's not as new anymore, but still we're working since 1 year and a half almost. And I will handle your questions, and you're able to give us your questions on the left-hand side in the chat. And you can also use Twitter if you use hashtag DesignFBH. And we will try to pass them forward to Caroline. Och för er som inte känner er så bekväma med att ställa frågor på engelska så går det förstås bra att ställa frågan på svenska, så ska vi försöka översätta så gott vi kan.
Och när vi har lyssnat till Caroline ungefär en halvtimme så kommer Robin Edman, som är vd på SVID, att vara den som börjar, den som är först med att få ställa frågor innan vi släpper in alla er andra. And after we have listened to Caroline, we will let Robin Edman, who is the chief executive of SWED, be the first person to start the conversation with comments or questions to Caroline. And now, Caroline, you are very welcome to Sweden. We're all excited and eager to listen to what you do in South Australia. Welcome, Caroline.
Thank you very much. It's so great to be with you all today. So my name's Caroline Curtis, and I'm currently the Chief Executive Officer at TACSI, which stands for the Australian Centre for Social Innovation. TACSI's been around for over 4 years now, and basically we exist to find new solutions to big social challenges that we face in Australia. And we do this in 3 different ways. First of all, we look at building new solutions to big social problems, and our areas of focus at the moment at TACSI are children and families, aged care, and Indigenous communities. The second thing that we do at TACSI is really explore that how question. So how can we, but also other organisations, governments, not-for-profits and the private sector, be more successful in building new solutions, creating more impactful policy and systems that really support best outcomes for people. And the third thing we do is around networks. How can we build intentional networks that help share and highlight the need for social innovation in Australia and across the world, and also help share the notion of what great work is. and provide people with some great examples and inspiration in their own work. So for the purpose of today, we're going to focus on the first area of TACSI, which is building and developing new solutions for people. And the solution that I'm going to share with you today is one called Family by Family. So my background is in child protection, and before coming to TACSI, I spent 10 years in the public sector in Australia, working in a range of different roles in the child protection system. And I think during my time in child protection, you know, there were a few success stories, but more than often not, unfortunately, we didn't get the outcomes we were looking for or desired. And I think I was left definitely asking myself, you know, surely there has to be something different than this, or something better for families. And surely families deserve to do more than bounce back from the hard times or just recover from crisis after crisis. Surely they deserve to, you know, to live a quality of life like the rest of us do. So I came across to TACSI, and the question that we were trying to answer was, how do we enable more South Australian families to grow and thrive and fewer families to spiral towards state intervention? So in Australia at the moment, we currently have 1 in 4.5 children that are reported for child abuse or neglect by the time they are age 15. Indigenous families, it's 1 in 2. So our statistics are fairly scary, and I think that it was acknowledged that if TACSI was going to start anywhere in terms of building a new innovative solution, this would be a great place to start. So in relation to how we actually built this solution, we used a methodology that really revolved around designing or creating the answer to this problem with the people experiencing the problem, so our end users. And TACSI's methodology has evolved quite significantly since this diagram that you see in front of you, but this will give you a good idea of the foundation that we built it upon. So before Family by Family actually even had its name, and it was just known as the Family Project, we wanted to really understand, I guess, a day in the life of families, and we really wanted to understand both the challenges that they face and also the opportunities. I think if you go out and you say to families, you know, how can you avoid interfacing with the child protection system, they're not going to take too kindly or really have too much to say in response to that question. So we started off by talking about stress, and we wanted to understand, you know, what made life stressful for families, and what was a possible solution, or how are some ways we could support families to move beyond stress. So we used a range of ethnographic techniques and spent anywhere from an evening through to 3 days with families in the south of Adelaide. And we mapped out their weeks, and we experienced the highs, the lows, we watched daytime TV, we walked around the neighbourhood, and we really wanted to understand what a day in the life for them was actually like. And from there came, I guess, lots of inspiration and opportunity, and real a strong in-depth knowledge about what some of those challenges and barriers were. And the families we spent time with were very diverse, and I think it's not just about spending time with families that were struggling, but about families that were actually doing really well and understanding how we could learn from them. So from there we generated some early ideas, and this is where the co-design element came into the picture. And we'd take out these half-baked ideas, and before you know it, families who are not backwards in coming forwards would give you lots of suggestions and ideas and say, oh, you know, no, we wouldn't do that, but we would do that, and that's a great idea, or that's a terrible idea. And you'd go through this iterative process of generating an idea which would eventually turn into a solution. And from there we wanted to really test those ideas. So talking is one thing, and I know in some scenarios there's paper prototyping, storyboards, but we feel that you learn the most when you actively test out those ideas in real time. And we tested out this idea called Family by Family. From there, it was really about developing the systems and the business case to take what was a 15-week prototype to something more substantial. I think since we developed Family by Family, we learned a huge amount from it, and I think that we've learned a lot about the other components from a methodology perspective that are really fundamental and vital to start from day one in terms of understanding what your business model is, and really as quickly as possible articulating and testing your assumptions around program logic or program theory. And our methodology at TACSI has definitely evolved to now reflect those learnings. So what is Family by Family? Family by Family, we're looking for two sorts of families. We're looking for families that have been through tough times, but they've come out the other side and they're doing well now. And they have lots to offer. They have strategies, they have experience, they have that know-how of really understanding what it's like to be in that person's shoes and want to give that back. And we link them up with families that are, you know, struggling, putting one foot in front of the other and have something about their life that they'd like to change. So we call our families that have come out the other side of those hard times and are mentors effectively, sharing families, and the families that have something in their life that they would like to change, seeking families. And what we're really interested in is not the friendship that develops or the relationship necessarily, but what changes as a result of that relationship. How does behaviour, how does attitude, how does family dynamics shift and change as a result of that connection and learning in context? And how do we measure that change? And that's really been our focus for the last 2.5 years. So the best way I can give you an up-close and personal feel to what Family by Family is to introduce you to a couple of our families that have been in the link-up and had some incredible success with their time together. So Dan, if you could flip across to the video, that'd be great.
I'm Sue. I'm a seeking family. I'm a single parent with 4 children. I wanted to focus on just being more positive with my own family and interacting in a positive way towards each other and showing them positive relationships with other people.
So I found that once I told her some of the things that I'd been through, it was kind of like, okay, well, I can tell you this much more, you know, and the more I told her about what I'd been through, the more she told me about what she'd been through.
My 9-year-old son has some special needs. He was too young for it to be labelled, so it got labelled as developmental delays, which is an umbrella thing. Yeah. Since then, I've been knocking on doors and you know, screaming and crying and whatever for help.
We have guest speakers giving us training, for example, from Autism SA. That was particularly significant with Sue because I was able to pass on that information.
Anastasia approached him then and I spoke about Sean and it just went from there.
Just like family, this is as good as it gets. This is my family, this woman here. She's helped me so much.
Sorry, I'm getting sad because that's the kind of thing that family actually does, you know, when someone's sick or they're going to have an assessment for a disability, you know, the family ring up and see how the outcome is or someone meets you there, and that's never happened for myself and my children. Makes me, at the end of the day, feel more special as a person, that someone does care about us. And yeah, I'm a better person because of it.
My family has grown so much through being linked up with Sue, just by being involved with her family. My children have a lot more empathy, they understand a lot more, they're asking a lot more questions.
Instead of me telling me, no, I'm useless, I'm this, that and the other, I've got someone saying, no, you are a good mum, you do a good job, you know. So it's just, yeah, that helps immensely.
Just seeing her come alive, the way that she holds herself compared to the way that she did when I first met her is just,
as you could see
she
there,
actually, you know, stands tall and smiles.
Life before family by family
Sue has a
was
really
pretty
significant
shitty.
background.
And now life is,
Sorry, Dan, it keeps playing at my end.
as it's just going to get better. It's as good as it can get for me at the moment, I believe.
So
you know?
Sue has a really significant background with a range of different services, and you know, she'd interfaced with child protection on and off in her life, but was incredibly alone. And I remember one of the first times I met her, she was really distressed because one of her children was starting at a new school and she had no one to put on the emergency contact form. And through her link up with Anastasia, they achieved a huge amount. And I think in many instances what we see is our seeking families that do the full circle and go around to become sharing families. And for our sharing families, the outcomes have also been incredibly powerful. We now have something like 60% of our sharing families that have entered study or employment as a result of becoming a sharing family. So that's been really exciting to see as well. We've got a 30-minute documentary of family by family on our website where you can hear from lots of different families and link ups about their journey. So I'd encourage you to have a look if you have a chance. In terms of who and how we built family by family, I think it's really important to also reflect and talk about the team that we had. And at TACSI, we're very eclectic. We embrace diversity and we think applying lots of different lenses to a problem or an opportunity is the most powerful way to really create impact. So like I said earlier, I'm a practitioner and social work trained. So I guess I'm one lens here at TACSI, but we also employ a range of different designers, from graphic designers, product designers, industrial designers, and they add a very different lens to some of the challenges we face. We also have business analysts, community development workers, academics, and I think we're really interested to see how looking through those different lenses can provide a much more robust case and complete picture to move forward. And it also makes for some fairly healthy and robust discussions as well. So from a design perspective, because I know that that's of particular interest to this audience, I just wanted to point out quite specifically where design fits in and where it fits into the family by family picture. I think that if I could leave a couple of things with the social space after my time in it, it would be firstly that we place the same level of intentionality into creating social solutions as we do into technology solutions or into product design. And the second is this notion around testing assumptions. So just because you create something and it doesn't fall over doesn't mean it actually works or serves its purpose. And I think that family by family is still going through lots of different iterations to really understand which parts of it work well and which parts we need to keep evolving. And I think we fundamentally believe that family by family will never finish. We will always be building and adapting and changing as people change, as communities change, as systems change, and as in our case as governments change. And I think it's really important that we embrace that and that we plan for that now and don't try and reach a finite state with it. So from a design perspective though, some of the interactions that have been very specifically designed and create a great amount of detail is in relation to our events. And whilst event sounds like a very broad term, finding these families is obviously incredibly important. And yes, we can tap into referral pathways and traditional, I guess, routes of finding families, but we like to hold lots of different events and find families that perhaps aren't connected into services or are falling through the gaps. And we don't think that they necessarily should have to come to us, so we go to them. So we run a range of different events from parks to pop-up stalls in supermarkets, barbecues, we go to schools and do a range of different things to put ourselves in their space and interact with their routine. The training for sharing families is obviously incredibly important, and we take them away on a camp when they first start with us. And this camp is about reflecting on their own journey and understanding how they've passed through difficult times in their life, and what are the strategies they adopted to move from a down to an up, and how can they share those strategies with another family. Link-ups is obviously the core activity, so this is when two families, a seeking and a sharing family, come together, and this is where I guess the change all happens. This is where the role modelling, the conversations, the learning in context all takes place. And like I said previously, measuring the change that occurs here is really significant and important. Ongoing support for the sharing families is also of utmost importance, and sharing families are all part of a team, and the professional role in the model is the coach, so they have a team coach, and once a week they come to team coaching, and team coaching is about reflecting what's working and what's not in their link-ups. It's about sharing ideas, it's about brainstorming, troubleshooting, it's about finding inspiration, and it's also about themselves connecting and looking at their own trajectories with their families. And lastly, but definitely not least, is the measurement aspect. And we've put a huge amount of effort into the evaluation for family by family, and we're just starting off with our next iteration of evaluation. And I guess we're kind of looking at three areas. We're really trying to understand the impact it creates from a child protection specific lens, but also from an outcomes lens, like how is family by family actually creating change for families? Who does it work for? Who doesn't it work for? In what context does it or doesn't it work? And then thirdly is quite a rigorous cost-benefit analysis. And to date we've had some real success in preventing children from either entering the child protection system or entering care, and we think that's a really powerful case moving forward. And our recent cost-benefit analysis showed that for every dollar spent, the state would save 7, and that's quite an exciting statistic very early on in our journey. So we've also recently just built an app for family by family. Families love iPads, and we now do all of our metrics on an app that's just been built with families, and that's just kicking off now, and we're just going through our first prototype of that, which is really exciting. And I think that's an important point for us, is it's not just about evaluation in terms of accountability, it's about evaluation that families can really engage with and also gain a sense of their own process, or progress, sorry. Are they moving forwards? Are they moving back? How is life changing for them? And we think them getting that feedback is really important. And we found that developing the app has taken us to a whole new level in them being able to really see and measure that for themselves. So in relation to this journey that families go through when they're connected, I think when we first started we put a lot of energy into how can we support families to build this relationship, and very quickly discovered that wasn't an issue at all, and the focus really needed to be on how we enabled the change aspect and how they used that relationship to enable behaviour change. And so creating this trajectory for families was really important, because some of our seeking families have really big stories. They have really complex issues and a lot of ups and downs and a lot of crisis, and it's very easy to get lost in that. So we developed what we called the link-up map, which really breaks their link-up down into 3 stages. The first is about developing a trusting relationship, which is what we know is core and fundamental to any sort of change. The second stage is about doing with, and we think that this is the really vital aspect of the model. So this new behaviour or this goal or this new thing they want to be able to do, how can their sharing family do that with them? So that's not just about handing them a brochure and pointing them to the local playgroup, but how do you go with them to that playgroup, show them how to start that conversation, start the conversation with them, go back the next week and the next week and the next week until that starts to feel like a new norm for that mum and child or family. It could be about making a phone call with them, going to services with them, having dinner as a family with them and showing what those positive interactions look like. And I think in the social services space, for many reasons, resources being one of them, we talk about things a lot. But I think the experiential nature of family by family is so much more powerful, and experiencing it with someone who you know has been in your shoes and experienced some of the same challenges that you have seems to be really powerful. And then the next stage of the link up is the doing without stage. So I guess we feel that it would be really easy for things to revert back very quickly if we didn't put some energy into that family practicing that new behaviour or set of behaviours without their sharing family. So we've worked with sharing families to develop a range of different strategies to support their seeking family to do that new behaviour or set of behaviours without them. So from an outcomes perspective, what we're really interested in is how families change their behaviour and achieve their goals, changes in their attitude, behaviour and social networks. And these are 4 of the things that we're measuring going forward. But I think it's also important to say here that an element of choice is a strong theme with family by family. And when a new link up begins, we don't tell them what they should be working on. We don't even hint at it. It's about letting families start where they're at. So that might mean you go and visit a family and, you know, they might be about to lose all their children. And they'll say, oh, I want to work on my backyard. And you'll be saying to yourself, well, really? Is that really what you want to be focusing on at the moment, your backyard? And before you know it, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks in, that the level of insight is really deepening within that link up, and they'll come back to a joint coaching session and say, oh, actually, I think now I really want to work on my relationship with my kids, or I really want to, you know, get welfare out of my life, or I want to have a better routine at home, and you start to see that insight grow. So we think a change in goal at certain stages in the link up is a really powerful, positive sign that that insight and capacity is shifting within that seeking family. So I guess that's heavily focused on the practice of family by family, and currently we're in the north and south of Adelaide, and we're actually in our very first week in Western Sydney in New South Wales, and it looks like next year we'll also be growing to other states in Australia. So scale is the big question for family by family at the moment. And the question we're asking is, how do we scale family by family and maintain that program integrity? And I honestly feel that the success in the model has been in the detail, and I think that the model is at risk of dilution once it scales. So we're going through a range of different steps and processes at the moment to really explore what licensing this model would be, and how we would maintain the integrity and fidelity of the model through a licensing platform. It's not as easy as franchising. Franchising suggests that it would generally be quite similar or the same in every place it popped up, but family by family is a place-based initiative. It's shaped for each community that it starts in, and we go through a 12-week scoping process to make sure that the model fits that community, and it's that community that really teach us what that shape is, and we put a lot of energy into making sure that we're not just replicating, that we're really adapting and creating a family by family that fits that community as stipulated by them. So scale is a big question for us at the moment, and an exciting but also scary question. And I think the other big thing that we're asking at the moment is, and this is on a TACSI level, is how do we move beyond solutions? And I think that creating a new solution that generates impact for people is really exciting and powerful. But creating, I guess, program at a time and changing community at a time is a slow way to do it. And so our new organisational strategy is really asking some of these big questions around shifting policy, shifting systems, and I think going through a program like Family by Family and being able to extrapolate some of the learnings from it and opportunities is a great way to initiate or spark change in a system. And for example, at the moment we're exploring what funding and procurement looks like, and how you decide who gets the money in the simplest terms. You know, our governments give out a huge amount of money to social services, and we've got a great opportunity at the moment to really dive into what the system is around tendering and those processes that come along with it. Same with place-based initiatives. You know, what's the system that sits around that? We know that we want it. We know that it adds value, but what does that really mean? When you create something for each individual community, what does that really mean, and how do you arrive at that place? So there are a lot of bigger questions that are coming from Family by Family and from lots of our other work here at TACSI, and we're really interested in how through doing innovation, through the actual doing, creating practice of innovation, that can really build momentum to shift and change systems. And so that is something else that we are focusing on at the moment. So it's definitely an exciting time for Family by Family and incredibly busy. The momentum behind it is quite unbelievable, but we're going with it and learning lots every day. And have a look at the TACSI website or Family by Family website and have a look at the documentary. I think that it would be time well worth spent. So I will hand over to questions now, and happy to answer anything I can.
Thank you very much for your nice presentation, and it was very clear, but still we've got some questions coming in. But we will start with giving the floor to Robin, please.
Okay, thank you for a great presentation. It was very enlightening, and there were a lot of things that you already mentioned, but one of them was involving designers. Now, I know that you won the Australian International Design Award in 2012 for service design, which is a great achievement. How do you come up with involving designers in the first place, and what do they bring to the party? So could you elaborate a little bit more on that and tell us about that?
Yep. Designers are involved at every step for us, and we also have a designer that's part of the ongoing Family by Family teams. And I think it comes back to this commitment that the model's never finished, and that everywhere it goes, every new person or community it works with, there's learning from that. And in my presentation I talked about that level of intentionality that goes into interactions and into all the touch points that families connect with, and design is just a fundamental part of that. When I first started at TACSI, I thought it was the most foreign concept, and I thought that designers made nice brochures, and it's been an incredibly enlightening and I think powerful process for myself and also TACSI to go through. And so, yeah, anything from graphic, product, industrial designers, they make up quite a significant part of our staff group here at TACSI, and will be an ongoing part of Family by Family.
Thank you. You mentioned touch points, and of course on a customer journey there are a lot of touch points. And considering you're doing this real life with real families, you're basically prototyping as you're going. How do you select the right team to actually do this? From people that have design skills to people that do not have design skills? Who is in front and who's sort of in the back office? Because the families are the main players. They're the focal.
I think it's really interesting. I think being a designer is one thing, and then design thinking is another thing. And I think that the majority of people that work at TACSI and work at family by family are design thinkers. And we make sure we build that capability in our staff here very early on. But I think that everyone at TACSI plays a role in prototyping. So with family by family, I was the coach, and worked really closely with our designer to really design those different touch points that happen in coaching with families. But I think it's when you're recruiting for a team, it's really trying to get at the heart of design thinking and the openness to that. So the ongoing iteration of things, throwing things out as quickly as you're making them, and really asking those questions very early on and at every stage.
Now, you also mentioned that one of the most important things right now is scaling this, and you've moved into a couple of new areas, geographic areas. How do you actually then, you said it's not a franchise, but how do you then select the teams when you scale it? How big are you going to grow? Are you going outside of Australia? And the last question is, how do you measure success at an aggregated level? You mentioned apps with the families, but at an aggregated level, how can you actually measure success so you can continue?
So the question of scale is obviously what we're focusing on at the moment. And we are looking at developing a licensing model for it. So there'll be a backbone for family by family, and that will, for example, be called Family by Family Australia, which is currently part of TACSI. But then how do we enable other not-for-profits or institutions to deliver the actual operations of the model? And I think there's lots of things that we're considering here. We want to make sure that we find the right people to deliver it. We want to make sure that we adequately support those people so they can deliver it to the best of their ability. And we want to make sure that we can initially build those capabilities in that team and in those organisations. And I think design thinking is a great example of the sort of capability we would need to build. So in the licensing model, we're currently exploring co-designing that with a range of different partners who are interested in taking on the model in different states in Australia. At the moment, the demand in Australia is quite incredible, so we're kind of trying to manage that, but I don't think we've ruled out other countries or overseas by any means. In terms of our evaluation design is quite significant, and what we will build into it as we do transfer into more of a licensing model is really trying to understand whether we have been able to maintain that integrity or whether parts of the model are getting diluted. And our evaluators having intimate knowledge of the program is incredibly important. So evaluation actually sits and will continue to sit centrally. It will sit with the backbone of family by family, so the information and the learnings can be aggregated across all of our sites and all the different locations that it pops up around Australia.
Fantastic. I wish you the best of luck, and now we'll let the rest of the audience in with their questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Now we've got quite a few questions from our audience, and we'll start to put them to you, maybe one or two at a time if they're similar. Do you want to start, Jonas?
Yes, I can start out. Lena Karlsson wonders, and me too, who is paying for family by family? And I also wonder about TACSI's role in the system. How do you connect to public sector, and how do you get your funding, and who pays for what, and so on and so forth?
Mm-hmm. So family by family, our funding is quite diverse. We have the South Australian Government and New South Wales Government, so public sector are funders of family by family, but we also have corporate money, we have foundation money, and we actually have other not-for-profits also investing in the ongoing development and scale of family by family. So it's quite diverse, and we plan to keep it that way. In terms of our relationship with the public sector, I think the really exciting opportunity for us is the relationship is definitely framed around something more than just the operations or the delivery of the model. Like the relationship's really framed around how can we learn from this, how can we learn from families, how can we learn from this methodology and apply that in other areas of our system. So an example would be the scoping phase that we use for family by family when we start up in a new location. How can we actually learn from that and apply that in different areas and with other place-based initiatives? So there's lots of opportunities, and I think buy-in from our public sector over here to look at how we learn from a solution and something that's really tangible and use that to inform a system or policy. And I think that we often try and look at how we change systems, but we don't have anything to grab onto. So TACSI is quite committed to the action side of things and really learning and informing from action.
So do you on a daily basis cooperate with the social care, the public funded social care? Or I don't know if you have an insurance solution for social care in Australia, but do you cooperate with them as an NGO, or how does that work? Or is it more that you're trying to sell in your... Okay, go ahead, Karen.
Well, so we work with most of our social services here are delivered by the public sector, so by government, and also by not-for-profits. And so we have relationships with both. So when we create a sounding board, and a sounding board is really looking at the greater learning of a model when it starts up in a new area. Not-for-profits play a part on that sounding board as well. And I think when you're looking at trying to change a system or create new policy, you have to be prepared to look through multiple lenses. It would be pointless in us just looking through a child protection lens when you need to look at how health, how justice, how education, how the mental health system all interact with that system or set of policies. So being inclusive and holistic and looking through as many lenses as possible, I think is really, really vital when you're trying to create change on that higher level.
Okay, thank you.
Caroline, does it happen that the public sector sort of advises families to seek seeking families, sort of? Do they recommend families who have not got an easy life to take contact with you? And the other question is the sharing families. Do they get some reimbursement? Do they get paid for the time that they put into this development project?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so with family by family, we've got 2 referral streams. We do, like I said in my presentation, our own recruitment, where we'll go hang out in supermarkets, pop-up stalls and family festivals at parks and really trying to find those families that perhaps aren't connected to services. But we also do work incredibly closely with the child protection system. So we do also receive referrals from government or a public sector. And yeah, so we do both, and we think that that's really important. The third stream that's emerged really strongly actually is self-referral. So probably now, I would say anywhere up to 50% of our families enter family by family through self-referring. And often those families are currently have a range of different services in their life, but feel like there's something missing and feel like family by family will add something different. In relation to sharing families and remuneration, yeah, they do receive a payment. It's not a huge amount. It's similar to in Australia being a foster carer. So I guess sharing families roughly get around 100 Australian dollars a week to link up with their family. But also some sharing families link up with more than one family. They link up with 2 or even 3 seeking families, and it becomes like their job. So they are remunerated for doing it. It's not a huge amount by any means, but it's something.
Does it go the other way around sometimes, that more than one sharing families is connected to one seeking families?
Yeah, occasionally it does, particularly if there's a particular issue or need or opportunity that comes up that we think another sharing family could really add value to. As a general rule, it's usually one sharing family at a time, but in certain instances we have put more than one sharing family on a particular link up.
Another question.
Yeah, we could do that. Just one clarification. When you find the sharing family, the family that gives, how did you do that? Can you describe the concrete? Is it like ads in the newspaper, or how do you get them to volunteer?
Yep, we find them very similar ways to the way we find our seeking families, and it's interesting now we've got such a big cohort of sharing families. The way that we are most successful with our recruitment is through their friends and their networks and family. So we now have a waiting list in South Australia to become a sharing family, and we obviously go through quite a rigorous process of ascertaining whether they really fit the profile of a sharing family. But initially, and if we ever do need to do recruitment, we do it in a similar way. We might go and spend some time at some local markets or at a school, or speak to some services that we think might have interfaced with families that have come out the other side of hard times. And I think initially we were concerned as to whether that was a good offer for someone, and you know, is becoming a sharing family something that people would want to do, and particularly in some of the more challenging communities. But I think we've just been overwhelmed by the response, and even starting up in New South Wales, it's our first week this week there, and the guys have been inundated with people that are really keen to become a sharing family and get involved. So I think it's really encouraging.
Okay, perfect. We have a question on the web from Ola Knutsson. Could you tell us some more on how you came up with this design, your first steps? How did you come up with the idea in the first place?
Yep. So when we were doing our ethnographic work right back at the beginning, there are a few strong themes that emerged over and over again. And one of them was, in Australia, we've created a very thick and heavy service system. So when someone's struggling, or if someone's not going well, or they have a particular problem, our first port of call here has become to access a service, or to approach government for support. And we haven't put anywhere near as much energy into building social capital and to building people and communities' own capacity to support or solve their own problems or challenges. And so this notion of isolation was so strong, and we were meeting families that sometimes had, I kid you not, 10, 12 or even 15 services in their life, but were incredibly isolated, had no one to speak to after 5 o'clock, had no one to connect with on the weekends, and were incredibly lonely, and limited change was occurring for them. The second theme that strongly emerged was this notion that I have a social worker and they're here and they help me, but it's only because they're paid to help me. They don't really care about me, and they're not going to be here forever. So wanting to create something that was more socially oriented was something that we caught hold of quite quickly. And one day I was sitting in a lady's house. Her name was Ange, and she was in domestic violence housing. And she had 4 kids, and I was just spending 4 or 5 hours at her house that night to understand a day in the life of Ange. And when I was at her house, I think there would have been probably 4 or 5 families that cycled through her house that night. You know, one had broken up with her boyfriend, one's wife was sick and needed to go to the doctor, one had just had a bad day. And before I knew it, here was this woman who had been through such a challenging time herself, was in domestic violence accommodation, had 4 kids, yet she was providing support for the whole street. And I think we found this scenario quite a few times, and that's when we ended up saying, wow, what a resource here. People are telling us they're isolated, they're telling us that their services only care because they're paid to care. They need more sort of social connection. And then there's these people like Ange who who seem to have this natural ability to support and have this desire to give back. I wonder if there's more Angers out there, and then really kind of went about finding these positive deviants of society, and there's lots of them. They're everywhere, and I think that they're one of the most valuable resources that we're definitely capitalising on in Family by Family.
Thank you. We have another question from Nora Ghanem. How many families do you have in the project as a whole? How many families can you manage in the system?
Yeah. So at the moment, I mean, it's still not huge in Adelaide specifically. We currently have about 60 sharing families, and so those 60 sharing families see anywhere up to around averages out at about 2 seeking families at a time, and link-ups go from anywhere to from 10 weeks to 30 weeks. So that's in South Australia. In New South Wales, we have 15 sharing families at the moment. So that's kind of at the moment, but the growth trajectory for it is slightly scary, and I think we're just in that phase now where we're really kind of building an even more robust evidence base underneath the model, and then it's going to take off quite quickly. So it's about building those systems so we can accommodate more families, and really at the moment that's what's holding us back. We want to make sure we can adequately support a certain number of families rather than taking them on and worrying about the systems and processes later. We want to plan for that in advance.
We've got somebody from Experio Lab in the region of Värmland asking about, is it possible to launch such a program in remote areas where there's far between the families? We don't know very much about your geography in Australia, but we believe that the places you talked about so far is sort of urban areas. What do you think about remote areas?
Yeah, predominantly to date it has been urban. You're correct there. Remote areas, yes, I think there is great potential, and if I look at some of the remote areas in Australia, of which there's plenty, I think that their notion of community is perhaps even stronger, and I think it will be an exciting move for us to look at how Family by Family does adapt to a rural setting. I think the beauty of the scoping process and really building Family by Family as a place-based initiative will mean that we can make appropriate or certain adaptations to the model so it can fit in that rural context. I think the key is knowing what you can change in the model and what you can't. We feel really strong on what we can't change, but I think there's lots that can change which would enable it to work really well in a rural setting, and that's definitely something we'll be testing out in the not too distant future.
You said something about the seeking families' opinion on the public sector welfare and all the different social care officers, that they were not there and they wouldn't be forever. Would you say that the sharing families and the seeking families often, when the program ends, come out as real friends, and do they keep contact for long or forever maybe?
Well, look, to date, in many cases they have, yes, they've developed a really strong relationship that they maintain after the life of their link-up. In other cases, one of the goals of the link-up is to connect them more meaningfully. So by the time their link-up does end, they've got a range of other connections that they feel really confident in that they can access. And we put quite a lot of focus and intention into that during the doing without phase in the link-up cycle. So yeah, and look, I think as well, it's hard to explain, but Family by Family, it's quite contagious, and once people become involved with it, they don't tend to go too far. So we hold lots of events all of the time, very active Facebookers, newsletters, school holiday programs, and so families past and present are always invited back to be a part of those. So they kind of become part of this fold, and also I think, as I mentioned in my presentation, quite a few of our seeking families also come on to become sharing families. So that's also a really nice evolution. And I think one of the things we're interested in looking forward is we don't think that every seeking family has the capability to become a sharing family, yet we still think they would add value. So we really want to design further what life after link-ups looks like, and how can we create another role or opportunity for those seeking families to add value to others coming through the family by family.
Thank you very much. I wonder about the model itself, family by family. Are the users still involved in evolving the model? You have been talking that some of the model is flexible, changeable, but when you modify your model, are the users involved in that stage too as co-designers?
Definitely. So when we move into a new community, it starts right back at the beginning, and we start with a range of different events, recruitment, ethnographies, and we're really wanting to learn from families what a day in the life of family in that certain community looks like. And then from there, once we've kind of got a feel for the place, we actively involve them in helping us to shape what family by family looks like. So we talk through the model as it is at its core, and then we'd really talk through in a lot of detail what would work, what wouldn't, what some alternatives, and they're heavily involved in that co-design process. And I think that's a value that we take very seriously, is that involving families is not a tokenistic one-off thing that happened at the beginning. It's something that happens over and over again at every decision point and every growth opportunity for the program, and we take that really seriously.
I think we are pretty close to our final time. We've got a couple of questions yet. Eva Westerling is asking you if you accept families. I suppose she means, say, sharing family. If not all the members of the families want to participate in your program. And the other question is, which is from Lena Carlson, when you identify the families, how many families must there be, and in the same group, do they have to have the same sort of problems?
So, no, I think that the really nice thing about the model is how those two families come together, and we put a lot of effort into that. And so, like I mentioned earlier, the element of choice is really important. So when we get a new referral or we meet a new seeking family that wants to become part of family by family, the coach will go out and visit them, and what they do is they lay out lots of different profiles in front of them, and the profiles have lots of photographs of the different sharing families and some information about their family and the tough times they've come through and the things they like doing. And the seeking family actually gets to choose which family they link up with. And you know, sometimes they choose it based on experience, but sometimes they also choose based on things like children's age. So there's kind of no real rhyme or reason to it, but we know it tends to work, and we've had very few link-ups and relationships that haven't worked, and we really put that down to the fact that, that the families get to choose who that person is. In relation to becoming a sharing family, and if all members need to be sort of on board with that, we've come up against that a few times, and I think it's really interesting. I would say generally no, but I guess what we have found is when, so say for example, mum and kids is really on board but dad might not be, what happens is mum comes on board and kids, and they get on this thriving trajectory, and before you know it, mum's enrolling at university and she wants to study social work or psychology. She's got this newfound confidence, she's contributing, and so the gap between mum and dad increases, and that can really create some issues. And you know, we have had scenarios where that then leads to, you know, mum leaving dad or vice versa. But I think if you go back and look at that picture from the beginning, there's usually some disharmony in that family, or mum or dad is really itching to move forwards in life. So So yeah, it's something that we do keep a really close eye on, and we talk a lot about in coaching or one-on-one with the sharing family if we need to. But I think keeping family by family as criteria free as possible is really important for us. So at the moment, we definitely still say family by family for all families, no matter what shape, size or culture.
Now, Caroline, thank you very much for your valuable time and all the information that you've given us. I'm pretty sure that most of our followers will, during the next week, have a look at your website and find some more information. I'm sure about that. Before we end, we would like you to give you the possibility to give one of the what's most important if somebody or an organization in Sweden would like to start something like your family to family program. What is your best advice?
My best advice for them would be to look through as many different lenses and employ as many different disciplines in doing that as possible, to engage the people experiencing the challenge or problem in designing or creating the solution, and most importantly, don't pick something and feel that you need to stick with it. Look at your whole set of assumptions across your practice and your business model and test those assumptions out over and over and over again, and make a lifelong commitment to doing that, because it's not a once-off activity. And I think that it's that is really determining our success with family by family, and it's that detail. And yes, it feels like a lot of work, but trust me, the work will be well worth it in the end.
Thank you very, very much. It's been a very pleasant morning for us. And thank you to everybody who's been following this seminar as well. If you're interested in design, or if you're interested in ethnical research or social work, I think you should come back within 2 weeks at lunchtime then to have a look at our next seminar, which is also about social care and about using design as a method. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
No, I'm happy to answer any emails if anyone would like to email me. My email's on the website. So, and we also have a senior designer position vacant at the moment. So if you think you fit the bill and you're ready for a move to Australia, come on over.
We might. Right. Thank you again. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye bye.